Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Linda. If you're a new subscriber, you're welcome. And if you're a returning subscriber, you're also welcome. On this channel, I share videos about sewing, pattern drafting, and everything in between. If this sounds like what you're interested in, you might definitely want to stick around and watch till the end. On today's episode of pattern drafting, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to draft this beautiful gown with Basque effect and underbust corset. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and also tap on the notification bell. Let's dive in. So guys, first things first, I drew a straight line as the shoulder line, and from there I'm going to be measuring with my tape rule the bust point, which is 10 inches. After that, I'll be going downwards again by 13 inches as on the bust line. And next thing I did was to measure out the waist measurement, which is 17 inches. And next I measured the hip line. Now I'm going to be extending that into a straight line with my ruler. Now I'll go ahead and label the lines as my bust line, my underbust, my waistline, and my hip line. The next thing I did was to measure half of my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches, and from there I'm going to be taking my neckline measurements of about 3 inches width and 3 inches depth. After doing so, I just went ahead to connect the line with my curved ruler as well. After drawing out the lines, I went down by 1 inch as the shoulder line for the shoulder slope. So I'm just going ahead to use my straight ruler and draw a slanted line up to the shoulder tip. And from there, I'm just going to be measuring the distance for my armhole measurement. But I will choose to go ahead and measure 1.5 inches upwards from the bust line. That will serve as my chest line. Now I'm just going to draw a straight line to connect the armhole. And from there, I'll be taking the distance between this part and this part, and I'll get the midpoint by folding my tape rule into 2 equal parts. And I'll mark this point as my midpoint. From there, I'll be going inwards by 0.5 inches, and also I'll be connecting this line, and this line with my curved ruler. Before that, I'm just go ahead and mark the quarter of my bust measurement at this point. Quarter of my bust measurement is 9.5, and I'm going to be using that as a point to connect my armhole curve. And now we have our armhole. Next thing I did was to draw out the lines in a darker shade of marker. Next, I went ahead to mark half of my bust part measurement, which is 7 inches divided by 2 equals 3.5. And I measured that starting from my bust point down to my hip line. So I'll just go ahead and connect that in a straight vertical line. After that, I placed my tape rule at this point by 1 inch. I went down by 1 inch at the bust point, and also at the waistline I went inwards on both sides by 0.5 inches, and I'll be connecting that into a straight line as well. Now it's time to connect the down part. I went ahead to adjust my hip line measurement, so I'll be connecting this part like you see me doing. The dart is going to stop at the hip line. After that, the next thing I did was to draw out a darker shade of line at the waistline. And next, it's time to work on the cup part. I'll be doing this the usual way by measuring half of an inch at this point upwards. And also, I'll be coming inwards at that point by another 0.5 inches. And I'll draw a short line to indicate that. Now, I'll be placing my curved ruler at this point like you see me doing from this part, and I'll be connecting it down to the underbust line. Kindly listen and pay attention to what I'll do next. So after I am done drawing out that curve, measure upwards to see what I have from my bust point to the underbust, which is 3 inches. I'll be adding up 0.5 inches to draw out the outer curve. This is because the bust is fuller on the outer part than in the middle part. So I'll just go ahead and mark upwards by another 0.5 inches, and I'll be using my curved ruler to draw out the other curve as well. Now that our curve has been completed, I'll just go ahead and extend this line like you see me doing. So next thing I'll do now is just to go ahead and measure the quarter of my round body circumference, starting with my bust line. So I'll be dividing my bust circumference by 4, and I'll be adding 1.5 inches for the stitching allowance. And I'll also go ahead and repeat the same thing at the bust point line. Now it's time to measure the waistline. My waistline divided by 4 plus 1 inch dart allowance plus extra general 1.5 inch stitching allowance. And also going to the hip line, I'll go ahead and mark the quarter of my hip circumference, and I'll be adding 1.5 inches allowance. So I'll just go ahead and connect that with my ruler to shaping it out. For the hip part, I'll be using my curved ruler to draw that out. And now it's time to work on the Basque effect. From the hip line, you can go ahead and measure 4 inches, but I'll be using 5 inches for mine. I'll be marking that as you see me doing. And from there, I'll be drawing a straight line in a slanted form, and I'll be connecting that as you see me doing. After that, next thing I did was to remove this excess line, and this is what I have for my hip line. So I'll just go ahead and cut that out. Kindly pay attention to see the areas I'm cutting through. Now this is what I have for my front piece, and this is how it looks like if you are arranging it. Okay, so the next thing I'll be doing now is just to fold in this part. If you are sewing it on your fabric, make sure you fold in the darts. I'll be doing that as soon as I'm about to cut it out on fabric. Going over to the yoke part, I'll go ahead and divide what I have for the shoulder line into 2 parts. So I'll be using my tape to find the midpoint and also divide it into 2. And from there, I'll be drawing a straight line downwards to the cup part. This is to enable me to make a slash and spread method. So I'll go ahead and cut through the lines, making sure to leave at least a little space before the end of the line. After I am done cutting the line, I went on to open up the space a little bit. So I'll be doing this on my fabric instead. I'll be opening it up a little bit because the style kind of have a little girders on the bust. Going over to the back piece, you can see that I have added a little extension of paper because of the zipper allowance. So I'll go ahead and draw 2 inches for the zipper. You can as well use 1.5 inches if you wish. For this back piece, I am basically repeating what I did for the front piece as well. Since I have explained that when I was cutting the front piece, I don't see a need to explain that all over again. The only difference here is the zipper allowance, so just watch the video and pay attention to what I am doing. Now all my horizontal measurements are going to be starting from the zipper line like you see me doing. For the back dart measurement, the different thing about this part is the fact that it's starting from the chest line and not the bust line. Now I'll just go ahead and mark out a straight line for my darts. And from this point, I'll be going inwards at this point by 0.5 inches on both sides like I did for the front, and then I'll connect the lines. And also I'll connect the lines downwards to the hip line. I'll be imputing quarter of my bust circumference at this point. And from there, I'll just go ahead and connect the back armhole curve like so. I'll just go ahead and impute the rest of the body circumference, which is the bust, the waist, and the hip line. I also included my stitching allowance and my dart allowance at the waistline, and I also added 1.5 stitching allowance at the hip line. And I connected that with my curved ruler as well. Now it's time to work on the Basque effect for the back piece. Starting from the hip line, I marked 5 inches downwards, and I'll be connecting that with my straight ruler into a straight line all the way to the hip line. Next, I went upwards at the bust line by 0.5 inches, and I'll be connecting that into a straight line. In order to eliminate the zipper bulge, I'll go inwards at the waistline by 0.5 inches. And from there, I'll just slant the line like you see me pointing. And I'll do the same thing for the down part as well. Next, it's time to cut out the back piece. This is going to be my yoke for the back. And for this other part, I'm going to be using Ankara fabric. Now my patterns are ready. This is the end result. I'm going to be placing this on my fabric and I'll be cutting it out, and that will be on my next video. Thank you guys for staying put with me up until the end of this video. If this video has been helpful to you, kindly give me a thumbs up and also tell me what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also tap on the notification bell. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye for now.